G'day everyone, welcome back to Europe 1100. This is Fat Rod, aka Rodimus, with another release update for you. So new update has just gone live, 1.6.4, and this is a massive update. A lot of big changes, quality of life, new content, as well as some bug fixes. So let's get into it. So the first thing to call out is that I've been able to leverage some code created by Carolina Warlord, and thank you to both himself and Yanis from AD 1259 for allowing me to leverage this code. But this does a couple of really important things. The first is that it removes the campaign option. So the only way to play now is Sandbox, and when you hit new game here, that will create a sandbox game. So that'll help with anyone who's run into issues from accidentally creating a campaign game. The second thing is that this code also removes the opening cinematics, so when you start the game you'll come straight to this screen. Also when we hit new game it will take us straight to the culture creation screen, which you can see it's done for us now. The next big thing this code does for us is when we pick our culture and we move through to the choose your stats stage, the first option where you choose your family, this is now fixed for all cultures. So there'll be an option, these actually differ based on the culture, but you'll now be able to choose that and get the appropriate stat buff, which is great. Moving on, the next thing we're able to do now is we've got an appropriate starting location for every culture. So I've gone with Georgian, one of the new ones we'll get to in a moment, but this has placed me right outside a Georgian settlement over in the Caucasus. So every single culture will now start in an appropriate location. And the final update, thanks to this new code, is the starting year. So you'll notice we're now starting in the year 1100. Pretty important for a mod named Europe 1100. It's only taken 11 months, but you can now start the game in 1100, which is fantastic. And that's also going to be really important for later scripting updates when we want to trigger time-based events and things like that. So moving on to our content updates now, and the first of these is that we have two new cultures with this release. First is the Bulgarians, and the second is the Georgians. One difference between these is that Georgia is also a kingdom within the game, so there are lords' clans, but there are none for the Bulgarians. They are literally just a culture, but they do have two settlements, which means you can still recruit Bulgarian troops if you want to play that way. So moving on through, we'll take a look at their troop trees and some of their settlements. So starting as a Bulgarian player, this has put me outside of Sredets, which is one of our new Bulgarian settlements. And if we take a look at the troop trees, I have keeping the Bulgarians pretty simple for now. I think this is a bit of a rush job, probably one of the ones I want to revisit in the near future. But what I've gone for is a mix of kind of Turkic nomads and Slavic troops. So you'll see we've got things like, these Slav-style helmets for a swordsman and a skirmisher, but then we've also got, the classic mounted Turkic archer as well. And then moving on to the elite troops, really just similar model that I've done for every culture. We've got different noble troops based on things like lordly titles, etc. Their heavy cavalry is not too bad. Yeah, not the strongest, but they'll get the job done. Moving on to our Georgian troop tree, this is the exact opposite. The Georgian troop tree is very strong, and I've done this because where Georgia is in our time period and on the map, they're pretty small. They've only got two settlements, which makes them pretty weak, and they've only got 5 clans. But historically speaking, the kingdom needs to survive, and it actually needs to grow. They need to conquer Tbilisi and kind of push into Armenia. So what I thought I would do was create, even though they're small, give them a troop tree that is, I guess, overpowered compared to the others in their area. The stats are the same. The stats are still the same as any other unit of that tier, but they are more heavily armored. So we look at our militia spearmen. You know, they've got multiple pieces of gear, high-level helmet, weapons. Moving on to their tier 3, very heavily armored. We can see the lamella over chainmail, and then moving on to their elite troops, all very heavily armored cavalry. Eric's done a bit of a play test. He tells me they're way too strong, so we'll see how we go. They might need a bit of a nerf, but we'll see how we go. But at the moment, very happy with the Georgians and how they've panned out. The last of our troop updates, because the Georgians are now a full kingdom, I've needed to put in a new mercenary group, and I've gone with the Jomsvikings, which is historically accurate group that actually stopped showing up in sources by 1100, but maybe there's a bit of an overlap there we can run with. Want to do these ones a little bit differently. They're pretty strong, pretty heavily armored, but focusing on anti-infantry. So we've got kind of the standard raider axe shield, two-handed axe for the berserker, and then the warlord character, kind of basing him a bit on Uhtred, someone like that, or maybe a sword Dane, just a big, heavily armored two-handed swordsman. So yeah, should be a fun one to see how he goes. Okay, so moving on to settlement updates, and pretty obvious here that I've done quite a bit. Anyone who's been on the forums or been on Discord, you've probably seen the message 1,000 times. We won't do any settlement updates until Lemmy finishes the map. I said that myself, but once I learned how to do it, I kind of got a bit carried away. So I've added 7 new settlements, or I should say towns and castles, and then a bunch of settlements to go along with those. I guess it is still just a testing phase at doing this. I don't want to get too carried away because Lemmy is continuing to make changes. But yeah, it is good to know that I can do this and that it works. So initially, looking at Bulgaria and Thrace, we've got 2 Bulgarian settlements with Sredets and Preslav. And I realised that any new kingdoms, I really need to do a town and a castle to give them both recruitment trees, which is what I've done for both the Bulgarians and the Georgians. Moving down into Thrace, we've added Adrionaple, which will be a new settlement for the Byzantines. Along with that, I've also added some new clans for the Byzantines because they need a few new settlement owners. And a new settlement, bound settlement for Thessaloniki because Sapina is now owned by Sredets, or I should say bound to Sredets. Moving over into Anatolia, we can see here I've added in Konya for the Sultanate of Rum. I think that's a very important one since that was the capital of the Sultanate. And I've also added in Tephrike here. Apologies for my pronunciation, probably isn't right, but added that in as a castle just to fill out this area. That one is with the Seljuk Empire, so the kind of the invisible boundary here is really Ankara, Konya, and Kayseri for the Sultanate of Rum. And then moving over into the Caucasus, we kind of saw these already, but we've added in Kutaisi for Georgia, as well as Taoskari Castle, yeah, as well as a few more bound settlements just to rebalance things. One thing I've noticed is that food within a few years in game, food is kind of all over the place. Some settlements have heaps and it's really cheap, and some have none. And I've realised that's because default Europe map, some settlements have food-bound, I should say, some towns have food-bound settlements, whereas some don't have any at all. You know, they might have clay and wood or whatever, and they have no food. And that's why some get a lot and some have hardly any. I'm going to rebalance that over time. I haven't aimed to do that yet, but really slowly I will start to make changes about what type of food a bound settlement creates. So moving on to new lords and clans. Like I said, Byzantines have 2 new clans with the Gabras and the Budimites. Really, this is just to flesh out where we've got new settlements. But also Sultanate of Rum and the Seljuks, I thought they needed a bit of a buff. I kind of want to make 5 clans my new minimum, just to ensure that they're not too weak compared to the groups around them. So we've got new clan for the Sultanate of Rum, and if we take a look at the Seljuks, we've got 2 new ones for these guys as well. So moving on to some of the culture changes now. So all of the Seljuk held areas, or I should say, all of the settlements in Anatolia I have changed back to Turco-Persian. I incorrectly had those as Turkic, but that doesn't reflect the Seljuks being an invading group from the steppe. So yeah, that's been changed back. I've also renamed any of the Byzantine-held cities to their Greek names. Europe map has the Turkish or Islamic names for everything in Anatolia, but you can see I've renamed a lot of these to what the Greek versions would be, while still leaving the ones already held by the Muslims. Moving down into Arabia, so I realized I think I had Turco-Persian for these settlements as well, but now Jeddah, Medina, and Al-Muwayli and Al-Muwayli Castle, these are all now Arabic in culture. So this is where you can recruit your Arab troops as well. And the last big change for cultures is that the Berbers have now been renamed to Imazigen. Thank you to the I can't remember the person's name, person on Discord who gave me some reading material on that. But yeah, I guess more culturally appropriate name is Imazigen, other than Berbers. You will still see Berber on the troop trees. I haven't done everything yet. That's just a first pass. But yeah, I'll continue to do that over time. So final updates, couple of bug fixes. The Henry Alphonse, you'll know that this used to crash when you viewed him in the encyclopedia, just a bug in the code which I've fixed up now, so that's all good. Lords with the wrong equipment sets, I think I've got all of these now. Yeah, it took a while, but wrong equipment sets on a lot of lords, but I think, you know, we shouldn't be seeing any more men dressed up as women, hopefully. So there we have it. That's it for this update. A lot of very exciting changes. Some things we'll probably need to review and adjust over time, but yeah, really starting to see the map and the world flesh out now. And there'll definitely be more to come in the future. See you next time.